the sacral and the root, two of the most powerful energy centers, one doing dual duty as pressure as well, pressure and energy, energy resource as far as the reproductivity or the ability to respond, the respondability, the ability to respond. So these two great powerhouses, you could say. What happens when the two of them connect is that it creates formatting in someone's design. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you have the whole channel. When you just have an activation in one of these channels, gate activations, you just have an activation, a planet hanging around there, it's still going to affect how you show up in the world. So it's a very special place in the body graph that we're learning about today. It's a really important place. In fact, when I look at charts in order to remember and assess them, this particular technique, besides looking at the type, strategy, and authority, the next place that I'll go is I'll look at this particular area of the body graph to see, okay, what is this person's formatting? So that then leads people to say, well, what if I have all three? Well, then you have all three. What if I don't have any? Well, then you don't have any. There is still a format to your body graph. It's just seen within the circuitry. But when you look at activations within this special area, which shows a lot of keys for our need for deep rest, our physical stress and pressure. So if we can get a sense of it as far as this area particularly, then we can see how a person's life is either patterned or cyclical or is oriented to the off-on pulse of here and now or not. And so you just link that to the keynotes of the planets. And I know I said just, you're still learning them, but it really does help you to assess what's going on, not only in a person's chart, but also their interactions with others. Okay. So again, remember that definition is what is colored in as in a full channel. So that's defined. And over here, if we just had a gate activation, that would not be definition to be technically correct. I keep reminding you because I was taught wrongly for about, a decade. And it's nice to contagiate people correctly now that I know what I know. Okay, so we're going to begin with the sacral. The sacral energy resource is the only center that creates a type, and it is about energy generation. So the generation of energy, the great fecundity of human beings. If we were to just reach into that body graph and rip out the sacral, we wouldn't reproduce, we wouldn't be alive. Everything hinges upon these people. You're generative, you're one of them. You have a red square colored in, then you have a channel that creates a consistent, reliable, trustworthy energy availability. You are only going to respond to the things that you have energy available to accomplish and finish. So what the sacral center is here for, it's here to create life. It's here to create life and to nourish and protect life. That's what it's here for. That's its job description. Now, there's all kinds of ways that we can create life. Rather than creating babies, which quite literally, yes, it's creating babies, but we could also nurture and protect those babies or children. That being said, anybody who does not have a defined sacral center, like all the non-energy resource people, projectors, manifestors, reflectors, we're not here to leave a lot of genetic material behind, is the way that Rob puts it, as in we can be conditioned to give birth and have babies and raise babies, but boy, is it exhausting to do that kind of work if you're not built for it. And the vast majority of people are running around in not self relationships, and therefore the byproduct of their relationships are not self progeny. So what happens is that there's a lot of challenge to staying together and being able to raise those children. And because of the background frequency breaking down of the 3740, where we don't have the same kind of impetus to stay together for the long haul in love, honor, and obey till death do us part, oftentimes what happens is the person that you mate with, bond with, and have babies with is not the person that you raise those babies with and what to do. So the breakdown of the family construct, and no longer are we all living in multi-generational households, generally speaking, for the vast majority of at least the modern, developed world, as you might say. So we have a challenge when it comes to we as in our species. If we measure a person's value on their productivity, then you have a lot of people who, quote unquote, come up short in that not only are there people who are non-sacral defined, projectors, manifestors, reflectors, but also you marry that to the fact that you might have somebody who is a quad right or any of the strongly right-facing variable arrows, then you have people who feel like there's something wrong with them because they're not as productive when they measure themselves against the modern world. And further compound that with the problem, as in the background frequency shift into the 3420 instead of, and that's charisma, design of response becoming, sorry, I always say response becoming deeds, but Ross says it's thoughts becoming deeds. So in response, this capability to be charismatic and busy in the now, that background frequency is conditioning all of us right now. And so you see a lot of people, especially projectors, the busiest peoples on the planet, because they're overdoing it. They're instead of learning how to maximize energy and resources and work with other people in guiding them with their awareness of their energy, the other person's energy, who are you, what the projector attempts to do is try to be them, like them, super slave away, rather than wait for recognition, two-way street, and formal invitation into those big things in life. So they end up enslaved or chained to a job that they hate, to the partner that they hate, to a desk they hate. And then you see also these generators running around thinking that they have to do certain things in order to be like everyone else too. And then you just get a world that is continually frustrated and chronically fatigued. So chronic fatigue syndrome, it's not a thing that's limited only to non-sacrals, but those non-sacrals are the people who generally tend to suffer the most and earlier on and work themselves into an early grave, unfortunately. Now that sounds kind of grim, but it is the experience that I've had and have seen. And we know that the solution is always to not allow the mind to run the show. We're going to do our best to learn from our experiences collectively and individually so that we don't get caught up in the enslavement trip that the sacral generator has been married to, not just in this current day and age, but for 90,000 years. Because if we recall how the hierarchy works as far as the order or orientation of the type, we had our reflectors first, way back in the day. And then came the pure manifesting generator. Out of that came the manifester and the generator. So manifestors were born to rule, archetypally speaking, that 2145. That is the top of the hierarchy. There is no end to hierarchies. It's how human beings are controlled. So sacral generators, whatever kind you are, your genetic lineage, your ancestral heritage has you for 90,000 plus years being slaves to the manifester. And unfortunately, that sets up a pattern of I have to, must, should in order to obey or do as I'm told. And you are not that anymore. And what happens is the moment that you give weight to your mind, which is a collection of conditioning from whatever it is that you've learned, what can happen is you continually are slaving away to your mind's process rather than attuning to the authoritative principle in you, which is you, your sacral energy, knows what it's capable of without your mind getting in the way. The unfortunate thing is that when you were little, whatever kind of authority you have, whether it's pure sacral or emotional, when you were little, your parents, well-meaning though they are, probably wanted you to articulate reasons as to why you had or or use your words. And you learned to attempt to please them because they're bigger than you, they're stronger than you know, you want them to love you or whatever. And sometimes that's generally where it tends to happen, where your mind kicks in and starts to go back on your own sacral response because it wasn't necessarily encouraged for you to go with your first initial gut response of or if there was no sound, they pushed you into it rather than giving you, let's say you're emotional, your time in order to process things. And I know I've got a child who is a split definition and emotional, and you cannot hurry up this little child. I know how hard it is to give somebody their process, their time. I myself am emotional. I know it takes time. And sometimes our minds can push us into trying to hurry because we're worried or fearful or scared or whatever the case may be. And we don't give our children their time to grow up. Hey, 15 years was the middle age for the seven-centered, right? And 30, oh, okay, hot and bright and it's done. Now, as far as the seven-centered being, now in this era, we've only had like 400 something years to be in this current nine-centered vehicle, which takes 50 years to fully mature, to start to fulfill your life's work. So putting a lot of pressure on the children, I know it's hard, but try not to. And what to do, it is what it is. Sometimes, you know, there are certain things that we cannot help. Like, I know right now a lot of people are having issue with expenses. You know, everything's very expensive nowadays. So what do? Teach them responsibility, personal responsibility, follow their response. Yeah. Help them be their own authority as soon as it's humanly possible, as long as they are staying safe, because that's our job as parents. Okay, that's my little parenting soapbox rant. Now, there's this false assumption that makes people think if the non-sacral projector, manifestor, reflector never knows when enough is enough, that a sacral generator automatically knows when enough is enough. And that's a falsity. What I see is that because they are trained very early to ignore their sacral sounds, what tends to happen is they will be more adherent to the mind and its process in an attempt to people please or whatever it happens to be. And then they don't actually follow their sacral. So then the sacral atrophies, just like a muscle, when you don't use it, it atrophies. Same thing happens with the sacral. And there are two ways that the sacral will express. If it's directly connected up to the throat, then the sacral sounds can emit verbal noise making. It can speak and articulate. However, if the sacral is not directly connected to the throat, then its or should be followed without question or reason, without whys. Then you add in the mix of the emotion time as a process, creating more need for contemplation or space or whatever the case may be, playing hard to get, as we recall, when it comes to being emotional, be hard to get. What happens is you question or second guess yourself to the detriment of your satisfaction or with yourself, who you are for yourself. Being who you are for yourself is the most important thing as a sacral generator of any kind, whether it be pure manifesting generator, manifesting through emotional potential, or whatever the case may be, pure emotional. You have to be who you are for yourself first. And that sounds quite selfish, but what to do? This is the school of enlightened selfishness that Ra gave us. And it is about entering into a world that will demand nothing less than you being your own authority. And that means going with your gut. Now, that being said, gut response. There is a very big over my years of watching people, both teaching and as a student and as someone who with her ear to the ground observing people and asking people, interviewing people. When we say gut response, there's a big population of people who say, it's not gut, it's way lower. Okay, way lower, like low, like, the guts, you would think, oh, my intestines. Yeah, generally guts. But some people are more like they're feeling it in their pelvic floor. They're feeling it. This is the sex organs, biologically speaking, what it is associated with, or your ovaries and testes. So it's your reproductive organs, and that's not gut-based. Guts are higher. So there is this, follow your gut bandied about, as in, you'll know what's right. You know what's right. But gut instincts, that's a different thing than maybe gut intuition, which is a different thing than the felt sense that is sensitive. So there's all these different nuances and subtleties, and it has to do with what channels are creating the authoritative process in you or in whoever it is that you're working with.